according to Tushar Gandhi, that the RSS has had over the years?
Rajdeep ji, I think the only structured political project which was ever taken on Indian education system was under Nurul Hassan, under the watch of Indira Gandhi. It's a well-established fact, and we have all seen the effects of that interventions made under his tutelage has had effects even till date. That's point number one. Number two, insinuating and trying to accuse an organization wherein no courts who have tried this case over and over again have established a clear linkage should not be presented as if there is an indirect association. Mm-hmm. I think it is wrong, and I think something like this should not be part of a curriculum offered to the students. Another thing that you conveniently did not mention actually, was that in one of the lines in NCERT, it was written, a Brahman Nathuram Godse murdered Gandhi. Isn't it bizarre when you go on and on saying that Muslims should be dealing with any act of terrorism, and herein NCERT books clearly targeted one community by mentioning them and associating and stapling it with the name of Nathuram Godse. So there were certain blatant errors which had to be removed. And I still believe it is too less. More such corrections and more such idiosyncrasies which have come in because of whims and fancies of certain left ideologies who joined hands with Indira Gandhi only at the condition that they could influence our school books. Those things should be undone, and sooner the better.
I'll come to the left versus right later on, but it's interesting, and I want to tell our viewers this. In the Times of India, when I was working there in the late 80s, there was a big newspaper on the day after Gandhi was assassinated which said Brahmin from Pune and named Nathuram Godse as a Brahmin from Pune. Now that's been removed, as Rajat just said. Instead, it now says assassin who surrendered was Nathuram Godse. Surely, Tushar Gandhi, you'll have no problem with that. Why should Godse be identified only purely as a Brahmin? So some aspects surely need to be changed.
It wasn't just Nathuram Godse. All the accused in the Gandhi murder case were Brahmins from Pune, and there is no harm in mentioning that. It does not mean that we are accusing all the Brahmins, but all the accused in the Gandhi murder were Brahmins. It is according. Even if you look at the charge sheet and FIRs filed, you will notice that what I have said is true, and so there is no harm in mentioning that. That does not imply that we brand the whole community as being murderers of Marxism.
It very much does, sir. It
does not. It does not. Absolutely does not.
Okay, no. So those are two views. One is that it very much brands an entire community. The other, Tushar Gandhi's view is you must put this fact before the people. Professor Makhanlal, where do you stand on these? These changes we are seeing in Gandhi's chapter, they've even eliminated from, for example, that organizations like RSS were banned for some time. Do you believe that these facts should not be put in the public domain? There is a need to relook at Gandhi's assassination in any way in history books?
It's not question of there is need to relook. It should have been relooked right from 1950s. After the case was decided, and it was also decided that RSS has nothing to do with the murder of Gandhiji, which was very unfortunate. RSS name should not have been dragged at all. After all, there have been several commissions which have been looking into the affair, and they have been categorically said that RSS has nothing to do with it. Number one. Number two, RSS, Nathuram Godse was a Brahmin. We forget how many thousands of Brahmins right from Ratnagiri to Pune and to Maharashtra to Nagpur, how many they were lynched. Lynched first time. In Maharashtra, Brahmins were lynched, and lynch should be used first time there. Why I am saying that Brahmins should not have been used? Have we not learned any lesson? Have we not learned any lesson from Mrs. Gandhi's murder? The fact that murderer was 6, it was mentioned, and what happened in Delhi itself? 4,006 were murdered all over India. I was at that time in Banaras Hindu University. Even in Varanasi, 6 were lynched. where we want to stop it, when we want to learn lesson from history.
Good.
What? So
A very
there
strong.
are few people in this country. I would, hold on, hold-
Yeah. Let Tushar Gandhi has put up his hand, Professor Makhanlal. Just let him respond to what he's just heard. You've heard Professor Makhanlal saying that, look, you can't just say that the RSS is involved in Gandhi's murder when commissions have never said so. That cannot be part of a history textbook. History cannot be based on
Rajdeep,
conjecture, speculation.
Very clear. Let me just make it very clear.
Rajdeep,
In both the trials,
Rajdeep,
in the
it's
Red
not
Fort-
I who is saying.
Yeah,
It's the court have said,
Sure.
and several
Please,
commissions have said. It's
Yeah.
not
Can I
I
speak
who is
now?
saying.
Point
Court have
taken,
said
sir.
RSS has nothing to do.
Point
And so also commissions.
Okay, you made the point. Let Tushar respond. Yes, Mr. Gandhi.
In none of the court cases, RSS was made the accused, and so in none of the courts, in the Red Fort trial, nor in the Punjab High Court appeal, RSS was tried, and there was no question of acquitting them or absolving them because they were never made part of the trial. But saying that commissions absolved them, I think they need to relook at the Kapoor Commission's report, which specifically and categorically mentions that unless they had the help of a nationwide organization with strong networks all over the country and sympathizers all over, this murder would never have happened. This is written in the Kapoor Commission's report. There has been only one commission that investigated the Gandhi murder. It was the Kapoor Commission, and I plead with both the learned friends on the panel, please go and read the Kapoor Commission's report.
Let me get a fourth view. Professor Mridula Mukherjee, do you believe that, as Professor Makhanlal is suggesting, in the 1950s itself, there should have been a relook at this, and because there was a Nehruvian history dominating India for 40 years, the RSS was in history textbooks virtually blamed for Gandhi's murder. Now we've reached the stage where even the ban has been removed. So we've moved from one extreme to the other.
No, I think this is an, completely imagined view of what happened in the 50s, 60s, 70s. I would like to take my stand. I mean, frankly, this discussion has moved off from the textbooks to the Gandhi murder, but never mind.
I'll come back to the textbooks later. This is one element of it.
Anyway, let me say very clearly that the very fact that 5 days after the assassination, on the 4th of February, Sardar Patel, Home Minister, issued a proclamation, a detailed proclamation explaining why it was necessary to ban the RSS. Does that tell us anything about what he thought? Forget Nehru. What about Patel, the so-called borrowed icon of the RSS and BJP today? Poor man. He was never looked at them his whole life. A hardcore congressman, today they want to make him their hero. Then at least take what he did seriously. There are letters he wrote to Shyama Prasad Mukherjee explaining why he had banned the RSS. He said, you cannot deny that they celebrated, they distributed sweets after the murder of Gandhi. I mean, Professor Makhanlal is incensed, and rightly so. Any lynching is wrong. And I am not one for naming any community. I am okay with removing the term Brahmin from there. It doesn't matter to me. But all the time when we mention Mughals, we say Muslims, terrorists. I mean, who is speaking? With what, what shall I say, with what gumption are they objecting to a community being named when all the time they do nothing but name a community? Miyas, Kabaristan. I mean, we are sick to death with the naming of a community, the demonization of a community, I mean, the targeting of a community, the silencing of a community. Does it lie in their mouths to object? I have no problem. I would be so happy if all these appellations could be removed. But that is not the issue here. The director of the NCRT did not say that they have removed these passages because they wanted to remove objectionable passages. He said they did it to lighten the burden.
Okay.
If they wanted to lighten the burden, they could have called back the same authors and said, can you reduce the weight? Can you summarize these chapters in some way so that some sensible way of reducing burden. Here you just drop passages which are inconvenient. How is it that only passages relating to Nehru get dropped, constitution making get dropped, Gandhi's murder get dropped, the Mughals get dropped? I mean, are we all supposed to be innocent or blind that we cannot see a pattern? We are just supposed to believe these gullible theories which are thrown at us that this was done for the interest of the children. You could do a better job for the interest of the children.
Okay, Professor Makanlal, you're raising your, let me give you a word and then we'll move on, to our next big question. But you want to respond, inconvenient chapters are being removed. That's really what it is, and it's politics. It's not about telling people facts, it's politics. It was done by previous governments, it's done now. You can't, suggest that this is actually about rewriting history. It's about removing inconvenient aspects of history.
No, I must confess that I have not read seriously, because I have been involved some other things, what has been removed and what has not been removed. But what I would like to say, and I appreciated Mridula ji when she said that when we will get out of this community business and all that, but at the same time about RSS ban, she used the word 4th February's letter. But RSS was banned initially, but we should get into again correspondence between Jawaharlal Nehru and Sardar Patel, who after a few months, Sardar Patel writes to Nehru that there is no point in keeping the ban on RSS because RSS was not involved, there is no evidence of it, and Nehru writes to Sardar Patel, yes, I agree with you, ban should be lifted. So ban was lifted precisely by the same people after realizing that it was wrong.
Okay,
so let us correct this straight away.
Okay,
I have written.
Professor, just a minute. Let's move to the next question. I think we've discussed Gandhi at the moment, and Gandhi, remember, unfortunately has got caught in this tangle at the moment, rather unfortunately, where you hear even Bapu being in some way or the other targeted almost, and even his life work being questioned in a way, particularly his efforts at Hindu-Muslim unity. Let's turn from there to the second question. Can the Mughals be erased from history books? And here I want to turn to you, Mr. Sharma, as an educationist, as someone who's been a vice principal of colleges, including Mayo College. Are you comfortable with the idea that the entire Mughal period is being erased from history books for class 12? Is that something, as an educationist, that troubles you, that politics seems to play a role in what is removed and what is kept?
It does trouble me, because ultimately what will we tell the young generation? That Rajputs and Marathas did not lose the war to these Mughals who came in? Did Mughals rule India or not? Did Sufiana movement took place? All these Chishti dargahs which are visited, which are so important for harmony and living together, that the children must have the flavor and true understanding. They must understand that Mughals ruled. Some of it is barbaric, but much of it is also welcome, and much of it was appreciated.
Right.
They were fair, and they can be removed Deen Ilahi from the system. I think the communal harmony, it is very important for us to understand that we have to live here and we have to respect each other, and the cultural pride of students in the ancient India must be restored, which we understand fully that any nationalist government or any government would like to have that semblance back.
You're saying that do not use history to, in a way, poison the minds of children. You put your finger up there, Rajat Sethi. Respond to that. And it seems that it's almost as if someone has decided the Mughals are the villains, and the villains have to be either erased or you have to show their darker side only.
Rajdeep ji, this is exactly what went wrong in our history books. This very myopic North India centric view as if that defines all of India, is exactly why we have seen such distant and recessionist movements even in the Northeast. Folks in the Northeast don't even relate with the history books because they believe that their heroes have never found a place. It is exactly because we saw a live demonstration that everything, every tehzeeb, every aspect of culture is only where Mughals were and their activities and how they coexisted supposedly peacefully with the Hindu community. That's the limited view. Have we ever seen and changed this continental view and started looking at the sea view also? How did India did its merchant trade through vessels and brought influence in not just our immediate neighborhood, but all the way up to Indonesia and elsewhere? Where have the history books found mention of that? Where have the history books found mention of the Chola kingdom? Where have they heard about and read about the Vidyasagar kingdom? The list goes on and on. Do you know about
I certainly know, Rajat, I certainly read about the Cholas and Vijayanagar Empire.
How many of the kids know that the Burman Empire after Harshvardhan ranged from all the way from Kuch Bihar all the way to today's Singapore? That was the size of these empires. And this myopic view that Mughal is all about Indian history is exactly what is wrong.
Okay.
We wasted. I became a historian so late in my life and I started exploring Northeastern history. And why is one important part of our country so segregated in our history books from the rest of the mainland? And these myopic views are exactly the root cause of everything which is wrong.
Okay.
And this needs to be corrected and needs to be corrected now and with a sense of urgency.
Okay,
what has happened now, it is just the tip of the iceberg and a lot has to happen starting now.
Okay. Mridula Mukherjee, strong words from Rajat Sethi. As he says, there are it is true that the Mughals have had a very central place in our history books. Rajat is suggesting, I don't think he's suggesting erase the Mughals, but he's saying please give equal space or at least proportionate space to other kings and other periods of Indian history. Your response, Mridula Mukherjee?
Firstly, I think one can just go on making these statements in the air. The history of Cholas, Chalukyas, Pandavas, Pallavas has never been... I mean, come on. We read about it in our school. Rajdeep, you just said you had... somebody the other day was saying history of Marathas has not been written. I mean, come on. Who doesn't know about Shivaji, Chhatrapati Shivaji, his valiant fight against the Mughals, the Marathas, Mahadajis in India, and how they were virtually running the Mughal Empire as their lieutenants in the late 18th century. I mean, this is all well-known fact. I don't know which history books these people read.
You don't think there has been no, 1 minute, ma'am. 1 minute, ma'am. Just a minute. Let's not have cross-talk.
Exactly attacking the messenger.
Ma'am.
This strategy is like attack the messenger, go after the messenger who's bringing a message, and this is how
Rajat, one by one.
Can I please heroes of our northeastern India.
Okay.
This
I'll tell you. I will tell you.
Okay.
Let me speak.
Okay, please go ahead, Mridula.
You judge the knowledge, you judge the history knowledge of the person who's trying to bring in a message, and accuse, and the chapter is closed, and you revert back to your instincts of only studying about Mughal. Please go on, glorify Mughals inside your bedrooms and your study rooms. Please do not bring in a disproportionate sense of history books on one small lineage alone, which ruled only for 200, 300 years.
Okay.
There is much bigger aspect of Indian history which needs to be looked at.
Rajat, you made your point. Let's try and avoid crosstalk. Mridula Mukherjee, do you believe it's disproportionate, the importance given to Mughals, and therefore if the government decides we are not going to erase it, but we are going to try and ensure an element of proportion, would you have a problem with that?
Firstly, these books have been written very carefully. You would first have to prove your point by actually citing the actual books, not just talking in the air about North. I remember very clearly that even in the book, which was removed in 2001 by the earlier NDA government on modern India, written by Bipin Chandra, there was a long passage in the chapter on the freedom struggle on Rani Gedalu, who we never had heard of, but she was a heroine. She joined the freedom movement. She was a princess from the Northeast. So firstly, these things are not true. These efforts to include Northeastern history, to more emphasis on South Indian history, these have been now made by Indian historians. the much reviled Indian historians, for at least the last 50 to 60 years since independence. So, you are asking us to reinvent the wheel. We reinvented it 50 years ago. We've been teaching it for more than 40 years. And, I don't have to sit and do research on Mughal India in my bedroom, firstly. All of us haven't done research on Mughal India. I haven't never worked on Mughal India. I only worked on the freedom struggle in India, and I worked on peasants, marginal groups. So we've been working on women, marginal groups, Dalits, all that we are told we should do. I'm sorry to tell you, please bother to read. We've already done it.
Okay, so Mridula Mukherjee, you two have made your... Okay, I'm going to ask all my panelists, try and keep them as concise as possible. Both of you have made very important points. I think we need to read our history. I certainly, in my final exam, had questions on Pallavas, Vijayanagar Empire and Cholas. So these have been part of history books. But Professor Makhanlal, this argument that the Mughals occupied center stage, is that the argument? Or is it that we need to see the Mughals in more complex terms? Akbar was a great ruler. He brought in the Din-e-Ilahi, but it's also Akbar who committed atrocities against some of his subjects because they belonged to a different religion. Do you believe that we need to give the Mughals their due space, but do it more objectively?
Let me first support partly Mridula Mukherjee ji to say that Pallavas, Cheras, Cholas, Kakatiyas, they were not taught. It's incorrect. I have been a student of history, I have been researcher of history, and I have been reading textbooks, and 2001, 2, 3, I was involved in all the changes that was brought in by NCERT. What I would like to emphasize, my agreement with Mridula ji ends there. What I would like to emphasize is, there has been completely disproportionate distribution of space for the dynasties. I would agree that Mughal occupied certainly disproportionate space too prominently, and I have heard it for the last 50 years from my South Indian friends, because after all, I did my PhD from Pune, so more than half of my interacting colleagues were from South India. They will always say that you North Indian think that we are the only one. I said, no, that's not true. The problem lies with certain kind of ideology which is giving more prominent space to Mughals, because after all, large number of dynasties in South India are contemporary to Mughals.
Yeah.
So that is where we have to come with one thing very clearly, that there has to be proportionate description, proportionate allotment of the space for all of them.
Okay.
Let us see Cholas. They have been ruling for, right from 6th, 7th century BC, and Cholas get mentioned even in a token inscription. They don't get that space, but to say that South Indian dynasties are not getting the space and North Indians have appropriated everything, that's a bit too harsh. I would like to say his complaint is partially true, that they should be getting more space, they should be getting larger coverage of their rules rather than just dynastic history, and that's the end of it. Their economic history, their social history, their political history, their trade, all these things do matter.
So you're
saying
where we need to do this. Okay, so you're
2001 to 2003.
You're calling for a more.
We did this.
You're calling for a more decentralized, in a way, a distribution of in terms of importance to different dynasties. But Tushar Gandhi, do you see conspiracy theories? You see, the moment it was reported Mughals being erased from history, immediately conspiracy theories come up. And this is the concern that some would have, that without again reading what are the books actually teaching, we suddenly believe this is a BJP government or a BJP Hindutva government which has decided to completely either villainize or erase the Mughals from history. Are there too many conspiracy theories?
It is. It's bound to happen. It's very natural to happen, seeing at the track record of the communal campaign that this government thrives on, and the communal agenda that they don't hide at all. When under their patronage these kind of things happen, the allegation is very justified in being made. There is no question about that. You have to see the allegation in the larger design of the Hindu Rashtra that they have been champions of, and the kind of Hindu Rashtra.
No,
that they have
you
been
see this, you see this.
champions of.
So you see this, whether it is with Gandhi or whether it is with Mughals, you see it as part of a Hindu Rashtra project.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's no doubt about it.
You know, Rajat, a quick word. You know, this is the conspiracy theory which is being brought out. It's all very well for Rajat Sethi to say, let's talk about Northeast history, let's talk about other histories, but all of the real objective is, according to Tushar Gandhi, Hindu Rashtra history.
Well, I don't think that statement deserves a response from me. What is there to
Thank
respond?
you.
It is one man's opinion. It's one man's opinion. It's not to be debated out here. On a more substantive point, Rajdeep, you just said that I'm trying to conveniently raise the topic around Northeast. You know, why do you have such a paternalistic approach towards one region?
No, I
and this, you know, this approach goes on, and it becomes deep-seated. Please understand these biases in the selection of words that even you make. And you are doing that on a live debate. And this is the root cause. I've spent 8-9 years, all my youth, in every single state, and speaking to the to fellow Indians as to why did this alienation found such deep-seated angst in form of a deep-seated angst among them. It is all these small things which add up. And here in a TV debate centered in New Delhi, we are sermonizing that, oh, we are trying to conveniently raise Northeastern's topic. And this is just a case in point. I mean, you go to every other region, you will figure out how much have we learned about Goa.
No,
Prior to Portuguese, prior to that, I mean, all these discussions, debates, I mean, not everything can be brought into an NCERT curriculum.
That's
and
the
this
point.
Is why you need
You see,
to
not
reduce,
everything-
reduce the impact of...
Not
Certainly,
everything can be
but you
brought
should
into
at
an
least
NCERT.
provide the option.
Yes.
Certainly, and therefore a disproportionate coverage on just one dynasty which ruled for 300, 400 years cannot be the end of our Indian history. And that's the important point which this decision of the government directionally suggests.
Okay.
And one shouldn't try to form larger opinions around it, because then it's an unending political narration,
Okay,
which we shouldn't get into.
Let me turn to the third question. Is contemporary history also being rewritten? Because what we've seen in recent times is also references to recent social justice movements, references to the emergency, references to the Gujarat riots, references to social justice movements are also in a way dangerously being removed. So is that also happening in some way, and how is that to be seen? Mr. Sharma, is that your worry also? That it's not just
Yes.
about the distant past, but even what has happened in the 60s, 70s, Naxalism, emergency, all of that is being rewritten in a way.
Yes, I agree that the contemporary history must also talk about emergency, must talk about Gujarat riots, must talk about, in political science, must talk about how a protest should be organized and how important it is in democratic way to put our views across. And all this must happen. On a lighter side, on another side is that the glory, the pride of the old Indian traditional culture, the Rajput valor, and all that must also be part of the curriculum in the Indian context. On lighter side, I wanted to say the Mughal garden has been named as Amrit Garden now, and I am very fond of Mughlai. I don't know what to say, that maine Amrit kha liya aur amar ho gaya.
That's right. Well, okay, we will, the Mughlai paratha and of course the Mughal gardens are, of course, have all become Amrit in the time. But let's come back to this. Contemporary social movements, and that is a real concern, Professor Makhanlal. Why should students of today not know more about the emergency? And they should also know more about the Chipko movement, and they should know about the Gujarat riots, or indeed the anti-Sikh riots of 1984. Let's tell people what happened. Why is this fear there that once I come to power, I will remove all the dark aspects of my past?
I totally agree with you. As a historian, I would like to say that we should all know. But there are certain norms for pedagogy. What you would like to teach at what stage? In the history, there are three situations. One is called Sarvamanya, accepted by everybody, one and all, that this is all. One is Bahumanya. 90% of historians will agree on the issue, other is disputed. In pedagogy, normally you begin with first Sarvamanya, which is accepted by all, historical fact by all. Slowly, as the children grow up, you go for Bahuman. The debatable things are always kept to the last, not for class 3, 4, 5 or 8, not for impressible mind, number one. Number two, yes, emergency has to be taught. I escaped from being arrested is another matter, but I know what has gone on. It was a real assault on democracy, and if it has to survive, we must learn from lesson. Emergency has to be taught to learn the lesson. When we talk about Gujarat riot, we should not forget what had happened in Gujarat in last 130, 40 years. There has not been a single year when Gujarat did not witness the riots, and in 1968-69, you know, almost
Ahmedabad
like
riots.
5,000 people, Hindus and Muslims, I am not pointing out, they were killed during the time of Chimanbhai Patel and other people. So why do you begin in 2002? That's where I have a resentment, that Gujarat riots history doesn't begin in 2002. It begins 130 years ago, and there are many books. One of the masterpieces is R.N.P. Singh, Rights and Wrong. Just going to that, and that is where I
Professor
say,
Makhanlal,
please don't pick and choose.
you're saying don't be selective, don't pick and choose. Mridula Mukherjee, is that part of the problem? Pick and choose. When there is a Congress government, they will be conscious of trying to ensure the emergency doesn't get center stage. Now you've got a BJP government, they will ensure, for example, that they don't want references to Gujarat 2002. Selective interpretation of history, this cherry picking is the problem.
But I mean, the facts that have just been cited don't support what you're saying. I mean, the emergency, the references, the passages on emergency have been removed. So obviously, this is not, there have to be other reasons also why it's happening. It's not, and by the way, let's at least remember that these books have been written by renowned, accepted scholars. I mean, the political science books, a known critic of the Congress, at that time at least, Yogendra Yadav was the head of the advisory board, Suhash Palsekar, one of our best political scientists. It cannot be that 10, 15 political scientists, 10, 15 historians, again 10, 15 sociologists, all of whom were involved in the writing of these present books. All of them were Congress lackeys when they wrote these books. I mean, this is not how scholars are. At least give us some dignity, some self-respect. We don't change our views according to the government in power. Otherwise, why would I be speaking the way I am today?
Okay.
At least grant us some integrity, at least.
You again make a very good point. I'm going to come back to you in a moment because there's a slight problem we're having here with your line. We'll get that corrected in a moment. But in some way, this leads me to my fourth and fifth question. Is history caught between left and right? And do our history books really need rewriting? That, I think, is central to this question. Mr. Sharma, as an educationist, as someone who's seen young students, do you believe an interesting point made by Professor Makhanlal, that at least let the young students, when I'm in 3rd to 7th, 8th, get basic history, and then the debatable, the contentious issues come later in life, in 12th, possibly if I take history in college? Do you believe that's the way to go in terms of rewriting books? First, give all the basic facts.
Yes, I think there is too much clutter there. And first, we should talk about the region, the regional history, the area in which a person lives. So the regional history should not be, uniformly done across the board. But in each region, they should do the history of the area, and then they should do some state history of the state, and then the national history. So some parts in junior classes should be left to the districts or the regional areas to write themselves and to research themselves.
That's an interesting point. So if I'm in Maharashtra, I would have perhaps greater focus on Shivaji. If I was in Tamil Nadu, I'd get more focus on the Cholas. If I was living in Guwahati, I would have a greater importance on the Ahams. I know you're smiling when I said that, Rajat, but I think there is something in a country,
Rajdeep,
in a
it should be the other way.
You believe it should be the other way?
Yeah, of course. Can I come in?
Yes, go ahead.
No, most certainly, most certainly. And I think, honestly speaking, these NCRT books, they don't bother me at all. Going forward, it is the algorithms of artificial intelligence and chat GPTs of the world which I would be more concerned about. I would certainly not want to see any ideological biases creeping into those algorithms when folks would want to, study about a dynasty or a region or understanding a more nuanced view around riots and what conjures up a gathering of protests and all of that. Those algorithms should be our key concern, and historians should, put their minds together on these algos, because these are being controlled by a handful of individuals. Those things matter much more in the coming days and age, and not the NCRT books alone. NCRT books have to be revised. That's a good start. But going forward, we have to be wary of how information is condensed by AI engines.
But will AI look at history left and right is also the question. But Tushar Gandhi, do you agree as someone who's looked at now Gandhi, for example, very closely, our freedom movement very closely, especially figures around Gandhi like Kasturba? Do you believe that possibly our history textbooks could need rewriting? Are we in agreement on that?
Rajdeep, the one thing that I would like to say is the time has come when education and primary education has to be liberated from political dominance, influence, and interference. It needs to be in the hands of educationists, not politicians with dubious qualifications. And I'm not branding anybody, although I have pointed my finger at someone, but I'm not branding anybody because political influence has always corrupted education, and we are a mature enough democracy to now have an independent, free, democratic education system.
But will that ever really happen, Professor Makhanlal? How each government seems to have, dare I say, their favorite historians. And I'm not questioning the integrity of our historians. We have very fine historians. But governments want historians to be politically aligned to them. You agree with that, and is that part of the problem?
I think that I am one person most uncomfortable with this kind of thing happening. Historians are historians, and also government should not interfere. I am all for the education to be free from government's direction. It should formulate the policy, leave it to educationists, number one. Number two, I am always very uncomfortable about writing and rewriting of history. Around the world, history is rewritten all the time. It is said that all the history is contemporary history. Why? Because all the time new evidences keep coming. You keep asking new kind of questions to old evidence. Take a piece of coin, a piece of silver. It may be an economic thing, but it has also got a question if you ask technology. How did they extract it? Then you talk in terms of trade. All kinds of things.
But history is also, written by victors.
That's required to rewrite it.
No, but Professor, history is also written by victors. So whoever is in power uses history to, further establish their power.
I'm coming on that. I'm exactly coming on that. So number one, history should be treated as all the time contemporary history. Each generation must write its history. And the moment you come, each generation must write its own history. All the issue of history written by Victor gets into dustbin. Because when you allow history to be written as contemporary history, each generation must write its own past, about its own past, about what it thinks about the future. The whole concept of history being written by victors will go down the dustbin. Believe me.
Okay. Yes, Tushar, you put your hand up. Yes.
The problem is that we have accepted the fact that the history is written by the victors. What the victors write is the stories of their glory. History can only be written neither by the loser nor by the victor. It has to be written by a competent, neutral person. That is the only history that is truthful.
Final word to you, Mridula Mukherjee. Do you believe that history needs how do we come out of this right versus left debate that we almost every few years find ourselves with in this context with NCRT textbooks?
You know, I think that we have to recognize, and this is a fact, firstly, the gentleman, I think Rajat probably said in the beginning only that this whole textbook project of the NCRT was initiated by Nurul Hassan. I want to just place it on record. It was the National Integration Council, after communalism resurfaced in the late 50s and early 60s, that actually said that we have to write new textbooks for our children, which are different from the colonial and communal viewpoints which were still being used in the old textbooks that were available. The new histories had not yet been even written. And this project was therefore undertaken in the mid-60s. The people involved in that from the beginning were Professors Bishesha Prasad and all from Delhi University. So this whole thing that this was some kind of leftist conspiracy enterprise is factually completely
So there was
wrong.
no whitewashing. There was no whitewashing, you're saying.
Sorry?
There was no attempt made to whitewash certain darker periods of our history.
No, there is no attempt to, not at all. And I mean, I also happen to have personally known the people who wrote the first generation of the history textbooks, like Professor Gopal was the chair of the editorial board, who was by no means a Marxist, Professor Bipin Chandra, Professor Satish Chandra, Romila Thapar, R.S. Sharma. Many times we had discussions where they said the first thing that they were told was this has to be a consensual history. These are textbooks, and they all consciously wrote books which reflected, as Professor Makhanlal said, the consensus view on Indian history.
Right.
You know, and let me also tell you, these books were removed by the first NDA government in 2001. The first generation of history textbooks, which are the ones who are called the leftist.
Mridula ji, 1977, R.S. Sharma book was removed in 1977. You are forgetting 1977. After Janata Party came, R.S. Sharma's Ancient India was removed.
Sorry?
That is where it begins.
Okay, so
I'm not able to hear very clearly. I'm sorry.
no, but Professor Makhanlal says there were, R.S. Sharma's book was removed in 1977 when the Janata government came to power. But very quickly,
Yeah,
I have 30 seconds. Can we move out of? Do you see it, ma'am? My point is, do you see it moving out of this Marxist versus right-wing nationalist historian? Romila Thapar will be branded. Today's historians will be branded, and you get caught between right versus left. Is it possible really to have an objective history for our children, yes or no?
I'm telling you that the histories which are there are objective histories. Please critique by quoting chapter and verse, not just make allegations.
Okay. That's a fair point, I think, on which we should perhaps call time out on this historical debate, because at the end of the day, we want our students to learn more, to improve their knowledge, particularly in this age where technology and WhatsApp otherwise takes over their lives. They need to learn a varied, pluralistic history, not propaganda, but facts. Is that possible? We'll wait and see. For now, I thank all my panelists for joining me. Thank you so much. And you out there, maybe pick up a history book this weekend. Thanks for watching. Stay well, stay safe. Jai Hind, Namaskar.
from different parts.
Armed with facts,
Looking at political black.
she takes the news by its horns.
Do you think the future of these students are not hampered?
Fierce, bold, and direct, setting the tone for the biggest stories from every corner and every angle. Expect nothing but the unfiltered truth.
News first, niceties later. Watch me, Nabila Jamal, on India Today.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com. Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
कर्नाटक की सरकार देश में सबसे भ्रष्ट सरकार है।
मोदी जी का जादू हर जगह सर चढ़कर बोलता है।
कर्नाटक की सरकार 40% की सरकार है।
कर्नाटका के लोगों ने संकल्प ले लिया है, मोदी तेरा कमल खिलेगा।
The Congress was in power. Karnataka was in harmony. Congress party is going to win the election.
दुनिया आज भारत की तरफ देख रही है और भारत हमारे कर्नाटका की तरफ देख रहा है।
So sorry.
कौन है भैया? कोई है वहां?
कोई? तुम मुझे जानते हो भैया, जानते हो तुम मुझे।
कहां हो तुम?
ढूंढ सको तो ढूंढ लो मुझे।
यहां हूं मैं। लेकिन ये तो मैं ही हूं भैया। राहुल मेरे भाई, राजनीति के अलावा भी तो दूसरे विकल्प हैं। नहीं भाई, मेरे उसूल, मेरे आदर्श इस बात की इजाजत नहीं देते भैया। उफ, तुम्हारे उसूल, तुम्हारे आदर्श, तुम्हारे उसूल की मदद से तुम 2 सीटों पर चुनाव भी नहीं जीत सकते हो। क्या दिया है तुम्हारे आदर्शों ने भैया? विधानसभा हार गए, लोकसभा भी हार गए, मुकदमा भी हार गए भैया, और तो और लोकसभा की सदस्यता भी हार गए। ये देखो, ये वही लोग हैं और ये वही तुम हो। आज उनके पास सत्ता है, सरकार है, सीटें हैं, सहयोगी हैं, पावर है। क्या है तुम्हारे पास? मेरे पास, मेरे पास, मेरे पास मां है भैया। नहीं, तुम्हारे पास मां नहीं, सिर्फ डिलेमा है। मम्मी, मम्मी, मेरा राजा बेटा, मेरा लाडला बेटा। मम्मी, ये क्या बोल रहा है? कौन? ये यही तो था अभी। मम्मी।
Good evening, viewers. Let's take a look at the weather report across the major cities this evening. Thiruvananthapuram is at 30 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 68. Mumbai is at 31 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 117. Panaji is at 29 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 89. Ahmedabad is at 34 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 132. Bhopal is at 30 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 76. Jaipur is at 32 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 88. Delhi is at 31 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 80. Srinagar is at 12 degrees Celsius with AQI being 26. Lucknow is at 33 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 86. Patna is at 33 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 160. Kolkata is at 35 degrees with an AQI of 124. Hyderabad is at 25 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 111. Bangalore is at 27 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 79. Chennai is at 32 degrees Celsius with an AQI of 110. This is all we have for you in this segment. Hope wherever you are, you find favorable weather around you. Keep watching India Today for all the weather updates with me AI Sana all through the day.
Co-presented by General Air Conditioners, the Extreme Machine.
Powered by
You Grow Capital, non-stop business करने की आजादी.
Union Bank of India, good people to bank with. Reliance Digital Personalizing Technology. Volkswagen Verter. आदित्य बिरला सन लाइफ इंश्योरेंस, इससे जरूरी कुछ भी नहीं.
Tata Trucks, देश के ट्रक्स.